5 Live Formula One.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back. It's Free Practice 2 about to get underway in Mexico City as the main drivers return to the cars after we saw 9 rookies out there for Free Practice 1, which was topped by Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. Track temperatures rising from a little earlier and qualifying long runs, simulations on the agenda. We're about to get our clearest picture yet of the pecking order heading into Saturday's qualifying session. It's Harry Benjamin with you in commentary. Alongside me is the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson and journalist and co-host of Inside the Piranha Club podcast, Rebecca Clancy. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. So we had a lot of rookie interruptions for FP1. A bit of a irrelevant session really as well, looking at performance, but one reflection I want to do on it was a great lap at the end from Arvid Lindblad, who finished a 10th ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull. Ominous.
Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen, was it? I can't imagine Yuki Tsunoda is particularly happy about that, given the pressure that he is under to keep that Red Bull seat. If you were listening to FP1, you will know that it is confirmed by Andrew Benson that Yuki Tsunoda will be out of that seat alongside Max Verstappen next year. Obviously, I'm joking. But we do believe that Tsunoda will be dropped from the top team, and he didn't do himself any favours. Unfortunately, Lindblad is expected to get the green light for the Racing Bull seat next year, and it's still all to play for as to who will be alongside him.
David Coulthard once said, Yuki Tsunoda's just passing through Formula One, and we all know that. And I'm surprised, to be honest, that he's passed through as slowly as he has.
I feel it's a bit harsh on Yuki, but he's got Honda backing. You don't get to Formula One without being half decent. So sometimes just some careers end sooner than others. Sometimes you do. No comment. Who are you referring to there?
No comment. Any?
3 no comments all round. It's a great start to Free Practice 2, guys. Lovely stuff. Not even a car on track yet. The grandstands are certainly filling up, though, around this Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez circuit, which spans just over 4.3 kilometres, 17 turns, 7 that go to the left, 10 that go to the right. You have that fantastically long start-finish straight. 811 metres you run down towards turn 1. A right-hander, which then immediately flicks you into a quick left-right, lap 1. Always very interesting to watch in that section. And then you head down another short straight. That'll be the second of the DRS zones before you come to the braking zone of turn 4. You turn left, and then it's a tight right-hander, followed by an even tighter right-hander, which then takes you back on yourself. A short blast then to the quick left-hand of turn 7. Then it's almost like you're riding a roller coaster and clinging on for dear life as you go left, then right again, before being kicked out of turn 11. Another short straight awaits you before the braking zone of turn 12. Very easy to run out wide there. 90-degree right-hander, which takes you in to a cauldron of noise that is the Foro Sol Stadium section. Part racetrack, part concert. A former baseball stadium. It increases the capacity of this circuit by 25,000 people, and come Sunday's Grand Prix, that will be packed to the rafters, where fans get the best view in the house of the Formula One cars that carve their way left and flick right, slightly up and over a hill, crest I should say at least, and then it's just one more long sweeping right-hander that takes you towards the checkered flag, which comes at you quickly, and that is a lap of this circuit. High-speed straights, tight and technical final sectors. So, as the drivers are in their Formula One cars and gearing up for this session, going to be particularly crucial for those that missed FP1, just to get back a little bit of track time. But in this FP2 session, then, what are we expecting to see? What's the usual port of call, Andrew?
So we have a few laps on either the medium or the hard tyre, which the teams will choose depending on what their tyre strategy is for the rest of the weekend. That'll take about 15 minutes or so. Then they will all switch onto the soft tyre to do a qualifying simulation. It won't be absolute qualifying. They have different fuel loads, so you can't really get a complete picture of respective pace. And then the last part of the session is devoted to the race simulation runs. I know Beck is very excited about that because it means long run corner.
It's the best bit of the whole day.
I hope you're working on your introduction.
That was all I'm working on. Don't come back to me in 50 minutes.
Absolutely not. As the queue of cars begins straight away with George Russell and Liam Lawson side by side, both returning to the cockpit of their Formula One cars, ready for that green light at the end of pit lane, which comes on. Free practice 2 is underway. The final hours running our 20 drivers get before Saturday approaches is go. And if you would like to do a sync up, it's coming at you with 59 minutes and 42, 41, 40 seconds remaining of this FP2 session, and they are indeed heading out on a mix of the medium and hard tyres. Looks like Fernando Alonso's gone out there on the soft tyre. Just a word on the Pirelli rubber that they're running. They have brought 3 compounds as usual, but we've got a jump in compounds. We go from the C2 hard to the C4 medium and the C5 soft. We saw a jump in compounds last week in Austin as Pirelli endeavour to try and mix up the strategic options available to the teams, hoping for a 2-stop strategy. But as we saw last week, that didn't quite pan out. Last year, for reference, Carlos Sainz won the race, having started on the medium tyre, went to lap 32 before sticking on the hard rubber and going all the way to the end. But crucial running then to figure out exactly what the strategy will be. Crucial running then for Max Verstappen, who returns to his Red Bull, having made way of Arvid Lindblad, and he's making his way now through towards turn 12.
I've got an issue.
Okay, looking at it.
Limp home is saying.
Limp home mode for Kimi Antonelli, turn 7 I should have said for Verstappen. We're seeing Kimi Antonelli making his way around now, and in that limited engine mode as the sun glints off that silver arrow, still making his way round, but maybe a slight technical issue then.
Yeah, and Harry, we saw, I think you were probably going to say this and got distracted by the Antonelli radio, we saw a whole load of Flovis paint on the side, both sides of Max Verstappen's Red Bull, and that's because Red Bull have another new floor, the second new floor in 4 races to follow the one from the Italian Grand Prix. And that floor, in conjunction with a new front wing family, is what's led to this change in form that we've seen from Verstappen and his incredible climb in the championship to be right in contention with Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. So it's interesting that Red Bull have got another new floor here in Mexico, and if it works as well as the last one did, then McLaren should be really very afraid, I think.
I mean, it's the talk of the town, isn't it? It's what we've been speaking about pretty much since the checkered flag went down in Austin, Texas, about this title fight. Bring you up to speed with the standings and how they look. Oscar Piastri still leads the championship, but by only 14 points ahead of his teammate Lando Norris. Max Verstappen is third, 40 points behind the championship leader. And just to put that into context, well, since the summer break, Max Verstappen has scored 119 of 133 points available. He gained 64 points on Piastri in the last 4 Grand Prix alone. It is a brilliant turnaround, you almost want to say, from a car that looked a little lost at times in the early part of the season, but Red Bull continuing to work, and that's just highlighted by the fact they have brought, we're not talking a small little bit to the front wing. We're talking about a floor here, and this is a big sign from Red Bull that they want to be in this hunt.
And we have drive default 01. That recovers.
Yeah. No, I got it again.
Okay, so box.
Seems like I redid it and looks fine.
Okay, we'll continue. We'll advise at the end of the lap.
Kimi Antonelli talking to his engineer Pete Bonington, and is still out there actually, and has just crossed the line to go head down the start-finish straight. Looks like he's back up to speed, so just maybe a few technical gremlins there on board the Mercedes, having to hit the reset button a few times. That will be a little bit of cause for concern for them, but still making his way out there and beginning a flying lap, as is Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris just coming to the end of his first flying lap round the final corner on the medium tyre, puts it up into second place, a 1:19.5. Antonelli finished his lap and was a 1:19.4. Nothing in it in these early stages, but the track sure to ramp up along with the timings, and looks like Leclerc is off to a flying start as well as the sunshine reflects off that beautiful scarlet Scuderia Ferrari, and he goes to the top. And it is a long way down, isn't it? All the way towards turn 1. I think if we're going to see action anywhere, and let's face it, overtaking isn't always the easiest around Mexico City. You've really got a couple of main options, as Lance Stroll, who was back in the car for free practice 1, heading into turn 12, well, picked up what looked like a little bit of a plastic bag that gets sucked under the car, but then ran wide anyway, and Lewis Hamilton making his way through the polystyrene bollards that lead you back onto the track when you run wide, which is what he did in the S's section between turns 8, 9 and 10, and gets back on his way. But the track really dusty before the action this morning, and still continues to be dusty the minute you go offline.
There's not a lot of grip there, is there? They all seem to be struggling with it. It's talking back to the championship fights as we see Piastri. This is the first time that Norris and Verstappen have been in the car this weekend, and both of them were sat on the pit wall this morning for FP1, trying to get as much data as they can from the guys who were in their car, learning what they can. Do you know who wasn't on the pit wall? George Russell. Festi was in the car for him this morning, and George Russell took the opportunity to have a little trip out to the Foro Sol grandstand. And as I was mentioning in FP1, if you're not aware, that... Oh, Norris radio?
I just a lot of misfires.
Okay, checking now.
Yeah, like out of every corner. Or just surges, a lot of surges.
Okay, understood.
So Lando Norris then reporting some issues on board his McLaren. He's just making his way out of the Foro Sol, where, as you were saying, George Russell made a visit to this morning. Does he stay out? Looks like he does stay out again. So Norris continuing to head round.
So the Foro Sol, there's a grandstand to get into it from the paddock. It's right down one end, so it's actually very easy to get to. The paddock and the Foro Sol basically connected. So he took a picture of himself and he sat right in the grandstands wearing a Lucha Libre face mask, watching Festi go around in his car. And if Lucha Libre is the Mexican wrestling, which I think is one of the reasons I love this city so much, every year we go and watch the wrestling and it's absolutely superb. But can you imagine being an F1 fan sitting in the grandstand and you turn around and suddenly George Russell's sat next to you? And George Russell was saying he hasn't watched cars on track for so long, like years and years and years. Isn't that just a brilliant use of your time as a driver? If you're not going to be in the car, well, you might as well go and enjoy the atmosphere.
It is, but I think he was incognito, wasn't he? He didn't take the mask off.
No, he left it on. He left it on, yeah. But he's a very tall fella, like he stands out a lot.
Yes, if you know him, I think, but if you're not expected to see him next to you, you probably wouldn't realise it was him, right? I mean, I probably would, but I'm not sure a fan would. I seem to bump into George Russell quite a lot at race weekends, like away from the track. We seem to eat in the same brunch places, and I feel like he's quite a distinguishable character. But no, anyway, incognito, fantastic use of time.
No, I respect it, and more power to him. How impressed you been with George this year, though?
So impressed. I mean, fair play to him, because it must be incredibly intense for him. He's not in a championship winning car, obviously. He's got himself 2 wins. That car isn't where it should be. Everyone knows that, but he's having the season of his life. Mathematically, he's still in the championship hunt, but basically not really, let's be honest. He's not suddenly someone we're considering. Yeah, go on, Benny, you want to interrupt me?
Is it the season of his life, or was last year the season of his life when he absolutely crushed Lewis Hamilton?
Just Anthony reporting he's got another issue. He's now back in the garage.
Is it just as good? I'm not saying it's not a good season. It is. But how are we judging compared to last year when he was also outstanding?
A fair question. Not the first season he beat Lewis Hamilton, though, either, last year.
No, but he did it more comprehensively last year.
Yes, it was. I think this year he's been even better.
And I should say, a mixture of not quite outstanding and an incredibly outstanding moment from George Russell a minute ago. Lost the rear of his Mercedes coming through the high-speed S's section. Ran off at the gap between turn 7 and 8. And you have to follow the bollards, really, and sort of weave between them. But he was a bit late to do that, so had to squeeze his Mercedes in between the two of them. Judged it to perfection. Skimmed one of the bollards, but didn't make a mess of it. So a nice bit of controlled driving there from George Russell, despite running off the track.
You could tell he lived in London for a few years, can't you? Squeezing through the streets, getting his McLaren through there. Mercedes.
In a ridiculously big car that has no right to being there. It's an interesting point Andrew raised. I suppose it goes back to, well, you look at the bigger picture of Lewis Hamilton and his performances and how well he's done over the last, this ground effect era of car, I suppose you have to say, since the introduction in 2022 after, that loss of the championship in 2021, and the progressive nature that George Russell was able to get on terms of him and then beats him by the end. But I think it's so impressive, and what makes this year more impressive for George Russell is that he hasn't had the tools at his disposal, but he always seems to be able to get the maximum out of the car, and it's just the way I think he's stepped up into into that leader role. You know, you have to make an impact. No matter how good Lewis Hamilton was towards the end of his tenure of Mercedes, he's still Lewis Hamilton, and he's still intrinsically linked with Mercedes as a team leader, as a champion. I think George Russell has stepped up to the plate massively in the wake of Hamilton's departure, and it's made losing Lewis Hamilton just like a little inconvenience for Mercedes, rather than we've just lost our 7-time world champion. We could have really done with him for another year.
I completely agree with you. That was what I was going to say. It's for me, the reason it's impressive is the way that he has stepped up. It has been so seamless. The team has formed around him. So it's not just that he's excellent in the car. He's clearly a brilliant team person. He's good for morale. Everyone really likes him. He's a super smart guy as well. He's like, this probably sounds a bit strange, he's just super normal as well. Like, you can have very normal conversations. He's still one of those drivers that if you see him in the paddock, he stops and he talks to you and you'll have a natter about things. It's not always necessarily about F1 either. He's just a very nice guy. The team really enjoy working with him. I think he really showed his mettle when he was at Williams for those 3 years. You know, okay, he didn't want to be at Williams for 3 years. Of course he didn't. He wanted to be in that Mercedes that could possibly be fighting for championships, but he kept his head down. He grafted, he learnt the trade, and I think a lot of that is now coming through, and it's showing with what he's doing this season. And I think he's been absolutely brilliant, and I think even now still he's slightly going under the radar. He's still keeping his head down. He works incredibly hard. He is doing absolutely everything he can to prolong his career, to make himself better. He's, you know, he wears blue tinted glasses at night time, and like, there's so much that he is doing behind the scenes. A lot of the contract extension talk wasn't about money. It was about the extra stuff that they have to do, the extracurricular stuff, the sponsor days, the media days, all of this stuff that takes away from him being able to do his training, from him being able to look after himself, from him ultimately becoming a world champion, because that is all he wants.
Two more points I just want to make on Russell, for fear of sounding like a bit of a fanboy. But I think there are some things that I think a lot of people might not know, is kind of referring to how his off-track demeanour. The first time I ever bumped into George Russell, he introduced himself to me for a start, and I was like, okay, I know exactly who you are. Who am I to you? And so, first of all, he makes you feel perfectly at ease straight away. And then the second thing was, we were in Canada, I think it was a couple of years ago now, and we were walking back to our car. And it's a bit of a walk. You go over the little basin, the bridge, over the bit of water, and then you walk down a bit. And we were parked a little way away. And it was myself, our producer, and Rosanna Tennant, who's a part of the team, when we were on site. And Rosanna at the time, I think, was quite heavily pregnant. And we were getting passed by these cars, and one of them stopped, pulled over, rolled down the window, and it was George Russell offering Rosanna and the rest of us a lift back to our car. And I just thought, you would not get this from every Formula One driver.
No, and I think George...
Any Formula One driver.
But, you know, for those of us who have been in the paddock for quite a long time and have known George since his junior single-seater days, I don't really feel like he's changed that much. You know, you stop, you chat. His girlfriend Carmen is lovely. She's exactly the same. She says hello. As I said, we seem to eat in the same places. Not that I'm like health conscious or anything, but we have good food taste. What can I say? But he will... Similar
tax brackets, yeah?
Yeah, well, absolutely, I know. But, you know, you get jet lag. Everyone's jet lagged. It's all the same. You know, you end up going for the same 6 a.m. runs as the rest of the paddock, and you bump into everybody. And, you know, he's out there as well, and he says hello to people. And he's just a very nice, normal bloke who, he doesn't come from loads of money. You know, he really has grafted to get where he is, the family, the multiple jobs, all of that side of it. And he's absolutely earned his place on this grid. I do think he will be a world champion one day. He absolutely has the talent for it. He's got the right work ethic for it. And I think if Mercedes can give him a car, or even a glimpse of a car, I don't think he's one of these drivers who needs the car to be completely perfect. I think, as you say, he can go above what the car can offer. So I think he's absolutely going to be a champion one day.
I also think we've seen enough of an edge from him as well sometimes, where if it ever comes between him and like a Max Verstappen fighting for a title, I think he'd give as good as Verstappen gets.
I mean, the end of last season, we saw it, didn't we? The between Verstappen and Russell,
wasn't it? There was a bit of
onwards, a whole bit of chatting and a bit of, you know, elbows out and.
Oh, sorry, Beck. Lando Norris has nearly had a bit of a moment coming through the fast left-hander of turn 9 and 10, and then running out wide on the exit of 11 as well. So really pushing that McLaren hard and ultimately paying the price. He slows down. I think he's bailed out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for the Russell Verstappen, and obviously at the start of the year we had all the rumours, didn't we, about Verstappen potentially going to Mercedes, and it was definitely going to be Russell who was giving way. And I thought a little bit about that was actually, could you have Russell and Verstappen in the same team? I mean, who wouldn't want it? It would be fireworks. I mean, probably Toso and the headache that it would cause. You'd get a sponsorship from any aspirin paracetamol company, I'm sure. But I think he has got that edge to him that I think sometimes perhaps we see in other drivers that they don't have. I think sometimes when the visor goes down with Verstappen, for example, I find it quite difficult to marry those two personalities together. The Verstappen that you know away from track, who you can chat to, again, very nice guy, very polite guy when you interview him, very engaging, talks about really normal things. I remember when he got his cats, I'm a cat person, I'm sorry, don't stop listening.
Doesn't shock me.
Says the dog man.
Correct.
Exactly, yeah, of course. But when Max got his kittens with his partner, we were talking about cats, and he was asking me questions about when they stop pooing on the floor and scratching the furniture, and all these really normal conversations that you have, and then he gets into the car and he's a different beast. And I think actually that is what needs to happen. And I think it's exactly the same with Lewis Hamilton. I find that quite difficult to marry up those two people. And George is a little bit like that for me as well. And I think that is the edge that you need to be ruthless, because you have to be ruthless. Look at what Red Bull are doing with the tape. That is gamesmanship. I think Jolyon Palmer in the preview that we did yesterday, he used a really good word. It was skullduggery. And it is a bit of that. And I think actually, do you know what? When you're fighting for a world championship, don't you try everything? You have to, because the margins, the difference in talent with these guys isn't loads. Okay, Verstappen absolutely is the best of the best, and the other drivers aren't as good as him. But we're not talking huge margins. We're talking fine margins. So actually, anything extra that you can do, you've got to do it.
You absolutely do. George Russell then having a great season, sitting fourth in the championship right now. 2 poles, 2 wins and 8 podiums to his name. The invoice is in the post, George Russell, because we've given you quite a lot of airtime over the last 10 minutes.
We fanboyed, didn't we?
You're welcome. Back to the track action, 42 minutes, 57, 56, 55 seconds remaining. Good start so far, and good day so far, I think it's fair to say, for Ferrari. And Charles Leclerc, who is currently topping the times, 3/10 ahead of Lando Norris, is just being wheeled back into his garage. Lewis Hamilton up there as well, 3/10 away from his teammate. Hamilton third, Verstappen fourth, Piastri the top 5, Bortoletto in the Sauber is 6th ahead of Alonso, Stroll is 8th ahead of Tsunoda, and Albon the top 10. Then it's Russell in 11th, Antonelli 12th, Hülkenberg, Colapinto and Lawson the top 15, with Carlos Sainz, Behrman, Ocon, Hadjar and Gasly the top 20, as Hadjar just crosses the line on a hard time, puts himself up into 13th spot. So positive start so far for Ferrari, would you say? Who wants to take that one first?
I thought Benny was going to join in with the George Russell fan club.
He was contemplating it.
I know, but then he'd have to resign from the Fernando Alonso fan club.
I don't think George Russell needs any more love. You should get a room, Rebecca, the way you're talking about George Russell. I'm going to be getting jealous. Well, look, I guess Leclerc's probably benefiting from being the only top driver apart from Oscar Piastri out in first practice earlier today. He is 3/10 clear of Lando Norris at the top of the times, and it's very, very close behind him, with Norris, Hamilton, Verstappen and Piastri in order. And then Bortoletto's done a run on the soft tyres, followed by Alonso, and then Stroll, who also has done a run on the soft tyres.
This is the sound of Liam Lawson, by the way, in the Racing Bulls, going down the gears, slowing down for turn 1. The right-hander feeds you into the left. Can look so clunky at times, making the cars go through that sequence of corners. A slow right-hander, then left, then right again. Lawson immediately backing off on the medium tyre. Lawson at the moment down in 16th spot. We didn't see him in FP1, so trying to make up for some lost ground. Just on Ferrari, if we get to the end of this year and they have not won a single race, I think it will be their first winless season since 2021 or 2022. There's some question over that. We'll look at the data and come back to you. But Andrew, how big a disappointment will this year be, or will they just sweep it under the carpet and full focus on a brand new set of regulations? Because when you end the previous year challenging for a constructors title and you're not near that the following year, That's a big issue, especially for such a decorated team.
Yeah, not great. And Fred Vasseur ended last season and started this season predicting that this championship was going to go like the last one, that it'd be, all top 4 teams all sort of taking it in turns to be competing for wins, and that hasn't worked out like that at all for Ferrari. They got this car wrong, obviously. Fred Vasseur has just been given a new contract a couple of months ago as team principal. His contract did run out at the end of this year. I'm hearing little whispers that he's got till the middle of next year, and if they don't deliver in these new rules, then there might be fresh questions about Fred Vasseur's leadership at Ferrari. There's always a pressure cooker at Ferrari. You can't afford to fail for too long without questions being asked about your tenure as team principal. So I think they really do need to have a decent season next year.
I mean, Formula One, Beck, has such a short memory, doesn't it? And when Fred Vasseur came in and there was talk of how he's turning the culture around, and there was nothing but good words coming out about Fred Vasseur. But are we getting to a point with Ferrari where it's a bit like football teams who just sack the manager constantly? There's a bigger fault at play. Ultimately, the team principal is the man in charge and has to take responsibility, but is that actually going to do anything?
Yes, ultimately the team principal has an enormous impact on what happens with the team. I think we've seen it most recently at McLaren. Zak Brown has obviously been in charge as CEO of McLaren Racing for, coming up to 8-9 years maybe now. He initially had Andrea Seidlin, who left at the back end of 21, and then he brought in Stella, and Stella has been utterly fantastic at McLaren. The way that he has put that team together, the structures he's put in place, the culture he's put in place, he has been absolutely brilliant. So the team principal has an extremely important role. And with Fred Vasseur, when he went over to Ferrari, one of the first things that he did was to woo over Lewis Hamilton, and everyone was incredibly impressed with this. They are incredibly close. Fred Vasseur was team principal of many of the junior teams that Lewis Hamilton drove for. They've known each other for 20 odd years. They stay close. They still go for dinner together away from the track. So it wasn't the biggest surprise when he managed to convince him to leave Mercedes and go over. But nothing has really come from that. Obviously, this is the first year for Lewis over at Ferrari. But I think, Benny was talking about it a bit earlier in the sense of Ferrari were fighting for the Constructors' Championship last year. And as you say, Harry, very short memories. It's actually really easy to forget that, because McLaren came back this year looking like a completely different team. They had such a margin over everybody else, including Ferrari. Everyone else was just left scratching their heads as to how McLaren had done what they had done over the winter break. Ferrari don't seem to have moved forward really much at all this year. Every now and again we get a good weekend from them, as we did in Austin, and then it's the question of, okay, is this it? This is the springboard for them starting their season. But it never actually seems to go anywhere. They don't seem to really capture that momentum and keep rolling with it. So there will always be question marks over the team principal, because ultimately that's where the buck stops.
We're just beginning to see the soft tyre runs, Harry, and Alex Albon was on course to go top at the times, actually, in the Williams, but he hit the wall on the exit of the last corner, and he not a massive hit, because he's managed to keep going, but enough to lose him half a second, so he only ended up 7th with that run. We're getting replays of it now, and he's the bit of the after the tyres, he's hit a bit of the concrete wall there. We've been getting shots of James Vowles on the pit wall and so on. In fact, it just goes to show how little action there is on track. We've seen about 5 different shots of this clipping of the wall of Alex Albon in the last corner. Most of the other drivers are still out on medium tyres. Max Verstappen, that flow of his paint now gone away from the side of that Red Bull. Not really yet got an idea of any sense of the competitive order. It's still too early days.
Yeah, absolutely. Still Charles Leclerc, the fastest out there, though back in the pit lane. This is the sound of Max Verstappen, who is making his way through turn 10 at the moment. Quick right-hander, then left through 11, which spits you out down the short run towards turn 12, but up in the middle sector on his own time. Still about 3/10 down from Leclerc. Slows it down into the 90-degree right-hander before you head into the Foro Sol. Left-hander of 14, quickly out over the crest at 15, take the bump at 16, which catapults the car onto the right-hand side before you then try and apply the power out through that final corner. Almost a never-ending right-hander where we saw Albon just clip the wall moments ago. Grip at a premium here in Mexico City. Air temperature about 25.4 degrees. Track temperature sitting just below 39 degrees at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Looks like Kimi Antonelli has come back out as well. So early issues for Kimi Antonelli, which hopefully seem fixed as he's back out there as well. We also heard Lando Norris on the radio in his early stint complaining of misfires and surges from the engine. So and the battery attached to it. He's now back in the pits as McLaren continue to look at that issue. But I think after a bit of quiet, we're going to see some more soft tyre running as George Russell peeks out of his garage, and we get a nice look at some glossy new red walled rubber attached to all four corners of that Mercedes machine. 34 minutes and 35 seconds remaining. It's Charles Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, the top three. Leclerc about 3/10 ahead of the rest of the field. Verstappen and Antonelli, the top five. Then it's Piastri down in sixth ahead of Albon, Tsunoda, Stroll and Alonso, the top 10. Bortoletto is 11th ahead of Behrman, and Russell, who is just teetering out of the pit lane now, is down in 13th ahead of Lawson. Hadjar is 15th, then it's Hülkenberg, Colapinto, Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly in 20th. Worth noting actually, Carlos Sainz in the Williams, who's out there at the moment. Of course the winner here last year, but he comes into this weekend with a 5-place grid penalty, and he picks up 2 penalty points as well for his crash with Kimi Antonelli. Do you think 5 places is fair for that collision in Austin with Antonelli, Beck?
No, because I do not like penalties being held over to the next race. I just don't like it. He was obviously punished enough in Austin. He didn't finish the race. So yes, I know what you're going to say, and I know that they can't, and I know exactly what the FIA would say to me.
I made a face, if you want to know.
Which is the face that the FIA make as well when you talk to them about this, which is we don't determine penalties based on the outcome, we only determine them based on the action that was taken, which obviously led to said penalty. However, I think all penalties should apply to the race in which they happen. I don't like that they hang over, that he gets, okay, the penalty point's fair enough, but the 5-place grid drop for this race, for me, no, I don't like it.
I agree, but it kind of, in certain incidents, but it kind of ruined, okay, Carlos Sainz paid the price, he retired from the Grand Prix. Antonelli paid the price as well and didn't get any kind of recompense. What
do you want him to have, 5-place forward at this race?
No, but the recompense is Sainz has some sort of further punishment on a competitive level, because he punted Antonelli out of the points and never really recovered.
Yeah, but that's sport. It's not fair sometimes. You get knocked out. It's like racing. You want them to go wheel to wheel. You want them to push each other. These things happen sometimes. You know, he's not deliberately going into Antonelli to both crash out. So, you know, sometimes that just happens. He's had 2 penalty points. The penalty points are there as a deterrent as well. You get 12 penalty points, you get an automatic race ban, and I think the hangover is something that it annoys me.
I think we better go to the stewards and argue this one out.
Andrew Benson.
I'll tell you what, on penalty points though, that did give Sainz 2. He now sits with 4 points to his name. Still, Ollie Behrman actually holds the most amount of points right now. He's got 10 penalty points, as you say, Beck, 12, and you get a race ban. So Behrman still has to be a little careful. He's got until Brazil, so the next round, where he'll lose a couple. So that gives him a bit of breathing room. Max Verstappen is still right up there with 9 points, and we were talking about him a lot around sort of the Spanish Grand Prix time, I think, or just after, where he was very close to a race ban. So, you know, they do act as a deterrent, and even Behrman has said, you know, he does drive sometimes with a little bit of caution because he knows he's so close to a race ban.
But Verstappen doesn't, because,
no.
because we've asked him about this, because Verstappen isn't shy of sometimes getting 3 points, which is a kind of normal number for the stewards to give out. 2 or 3 is normally about what they hand out. So Verstappen is pretty close to a race ban as well. However, as I would say about Verstappen, he always knows where the line is. And I think one of the things that Red Bull have always been fantastic at over the years, not just recently, but, you know, kind of looking back when Jonathan Wheatley was the team manager there as well. You know, no one knows the regulations better than Jonathan Wheatley in this sport for me. And he always knew where to push to, where the line was, where there was a bit of maybe flex in that line and you could go a bit further. And Verstappen is absolutely brilliant at that. So I don't think he really needs to change his driving style. Obviously, throughout Verstappen's career, we've seen a lot of regulations come in to try and alter his driving style. But I think the penalty points do work to a degree, particularly for the younger drivers like Behrman, as you were saying. But I think for Verstappen, he's never going to change the way he goes racing.
He knows where the line is, and he also knows where the grey area is as well, does Max Verstappen. As we were seeing this time last year with all that driver guideline chat, just worth noting, there are a few drivers that have absolutely 0 points. Alonso, Ocon, Hadjar, Bortoleto and Hulkenberg all sit there with nothing. So they have played very nicely all season long. Just under half an hour left of this free practice 2 session. The soft tyres have been bolted on by a lot of the drivers, and we're starting, Andrew, to get a little look at that qualifying competitive order.
Indeed, and we've got Max Verstappen at the top of the times by about a tenth of a second from Charles Leclerc. The McLarens do not look in a happy place. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri is 6th and 7th fastest, 7 and 8 tenths down respectively, and Piastri had a very wild ride through the S's. The car was obviously very twitchy and nervous, whereas Verstappen's Red Bull looked completely planted. Now, of course, it's only free practice 2, so we don't know what fuel loads and everything, but it would be unusual for McLaren at this point of the weekend to be completely offset from the other cars in terms of fuel load, for example. So it does suggest as if McLaren are having a bit of a difficult day so far.
Yeah, Piastri lost about half a second to Norris in the middle sector, but then Norris lost a kind of similar amount in the final sector. So the opening part of the lap was all right for McLaren, but then it went away from both of their drivers. 6th and 7th at the moment, 7 and 8 tenths adrift of Max Verstappen's fastest time, which is a 1:17.392, a tenth clear of Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. George Russell sits 4 tenths back in third. Then comes Yuki Tsunoda, almost half a second off his teammate. Sainz has worked his way up to 5th in the Williams. Then come the two McLaren with Hadjar. Nico Hulkenberg's up there again, but he's almost a second off. It's enough for 9th at the moment. We've still got a couple of fast times to come, though. Antonelli rounds out the top 10. We're going to see where Fernando Alonso puts his Aston Martin. Round the final corner we go. The green-tinted AMR 25 goes 5th fastest, half a second off Max Verstappen. And for Fernando Alonso, Mexico hasn't actually been a particularly happy hunting ground for the Spaniard. In his 8 Mexico appearances, he's only scored a total of 3 points. So I think he'll be hoping for a little bit more here. But if there's a point to be had, Alonso will have it.
I mean, to be fair, he's only had one half-decent car in that entire time, hasn't he? So, yeah, that's all I would say about that. That was in 23. I can't remember what happened to Aston Martin in 23.
I think he retired.
Yeah, maybe he did. And then he had that great race in Brazil with the battle with Perez over 3rd place in the last lap.
That was mega.
That was mega, indeed, yeah. But yes, ever since Mexico came back on the calendar, Alonso's been in rubbish McLarens followed by rubbish Alpines and one decent Aston Martin, then some more rubbish Aston Martins.
It's never his fault, is it, Benny?
Well, I think even you would find it hard to make a case that in that scenario it was Beck. Even if you're trying to your most merciless Mickey taking.
You can give it, Andrew. You got to take it.
I think I just did give it back, didn't I?
All right, you two. That's enough. Alonso doing well enough, though, on that lap to put himself 5th. Williams looking strong, though, once again, even though they long switched off the taps when it comes to upgrades. Carlos Sainz, on his last lap around, went up to 6th, it is now, but he's about to go again as the second Aston Martin of Lance Stroll splits the McLarens and puts him up into 8th. Where's the other Williams? Alex Albon's down in 17th at the moment. How many laps has he done? 15 compared to Carlos Sainz, has done a couple more, but Albon at the moment confined to the garage. Sainz is definitely, compared to the start of the season, he sounds a lot more comfortable and embedded with that Williams team. Of course, the podium in Baku, a massive highlight. Even 3rd in the sprint in Austin was mega, as this is the sound of Carlos Sainz making his way through the S's of 7, 8, 9 and 10. So Sainz and Williams seems to be coming good now.
Yeah, it's taken a while, and I think he can be forgiven for that because the team was very much set up around Alex Albon. Albon, who I personally rate quite highly, I think he's absolutely fantastic. Sainz came in and there was a lot of expectation on his shoulders. Obviously, a former Ferrari driver, very good, was at Red Bull as well, has a very good reputation. And he didn't quite gel, did he? He couldn't quite get it to work for him. He was getting used to the car, getting used to the team. But as soon as it clicked, and it seems to have very much clicked for him since the summer break, he has just been up and running and away with it. And okay, we're just talking there about the penalty point and the grid place drops that he's got from Austin. But actually, I think, and that's the other reason I get a bit annoyed about these hanging over into the next race, because if you're Sainz, you could come in a bit grumpy, couldn't you, thinking no matter what I do, it's not great for overtaking in Mexico. I'm going to get a 5-place grid drop. You know, I can kind of, maybe it's a, you know, no disrespect to the Williams, but it's hard enough at the better times to get into the points. Getting 2 podiums is absolutely brilliant. And then he's coming in with this handicap of a 5-place grid penalty. So, you know, you could be a bit grumpy. I imagine Sainz isn't, because he's the consummate professional, but he has been so impressive lately. And actually, he's overshadowing Albon. And they're kind of the two drivers, they've flipped, haven't they? It was very much Albon at the start of the season, and now it's very much all the conversation with Williams. It's very much about Sainz.
Yeah, in Grand Prix qualifying head-to-head, it's now Sainz 10-8. And then in the Grand Prix races, well, it's 12-6 towards Albon. Sainz, a mixture of bad fortune at the start of the year and a couple of his own mistakes as well. But you know what has actually really surprised me, and what most cemented this, I think, was the cheer he got from the crowd in Austin when he finished third in that sprint. It's just how popular Carlos Sainz is. I didn't think he was an unpopular character, but I almost wonder, I think he's gained popularity since sort of being forced to leave Ferrari. It was kind of a relationship that was going well, but when Lewis Hamilton becomes available, you take Lewis Hamilton. So I think a lot of people have a bit of sympathy there, and that they want him to do well. And I wonder if within Sainz's mind there's a sort of a little tinge of pride that he's still the last guy to win in a Ferrari.
I mean, absolutely. But I think the way he conducted himself when he was dropped from Ferrari and he moved over to Williams, and it was obviously a huge demotion, and he did it all with poise and grace. He's an incredibly well-liked guy within the paddock, and it's very easy to see why, because he is also one of these super nice blokes. Again, he stops, he talks to you. And he's quite funny, you know, when he comes across, when we were at the livery launch at the start of the year. Oh gosh, that even still this year. It's been a long old season. And he's there on stage in the O2, and he's, you know, everyone's trying to egg him on to start singing Smooth Operator, and you think he might. And, you know, there's just a bit of fun to him. And, you know, you can see that he's actually really enjoying himself. And he's one of these people that when he's enjoying himself, he kind of takes you along for the ride with him. And so everyone gets behind him with the podiums, and everyone celebrates. And because it is a bit of an underdog story, and who doesn't love an underdog story?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. The 31-year-old from Madrid, Carlos Sainz, who will get a proper home Grand Prix next year when we have Madrid come onto the calendar. Tsunoda's just said on the radio, check the floor. He's hit the curb quite a lot at turn 2. Now, Max Verstappen seems pretty happy with his soft tyre running, his qualifying simulations, and you'd be quite right in thinking so. He's back in to the pits and back out again on the medium tyre, so expect to see some long run now from Max Verstappen and those who have come into the pit lane. Big gap in the end after the soft tyre running between Lando Norris, who managed to improve up to 4th, 2.5 tenths away from Verstappen, but Piastri, who did come out again but did not improve, and Piastri sits down in 12th. 8 tenths adrift from Verstappen, and almost 5-6 tenths off teammate. So with a huge bunch of cars in between them. So is this another worrying weekend for Oscar Piastri, who seems to lack a little bit of performance at the moment?
I would normally say don't pay too much attention to a Friday. I think I say that every Friday. But on this particular occasion, that is concerning. He's 6 tenths off his teammates, and it's not clear what's actually wrong. That's a huge gap, because they're all out on the soft tyres now. But yeah, that's concerning for Piastri. We were talking, weren't we, in FP1 about how he needs to have a good outing this weekend. In fact, I think, Benny, did you tip Piastri to win this race? I think you may have done, did you?
Might have done, yeah. It's only Friday, Beck.
Don't worry. As Harry said, everyone has short memories.
I think 6 tenths is too much for it to be something other than a mistake. I think he's not 6 tenths off, is he? Unless he's having an absolute nightmare. So there must. I did see that one lap that he did. It was pretty wild through the S's, so it was clearly not optimum. And I suspect when we speak to him, or when he speaks to the one single TV interview that the drivers do on a Friday, I suspect he'll be saying that he's had a tricky session and he made a mistake on his hot lap. Why he hasn't done a second lap, though, is a wider question.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He's just been reliant on that one lap. And it wouldn't be the first time we're talking about Piastri having a bad weekend, would it? So it's not the best start for him. And he was out in FP1 as well. So he's had a fair amount of track running. But, he's not having the Friday he would like.
His last Q1 exit was this time last year. Qualified 17th, did Oscar Piastri. Worked his way up into 8th. So I wonder if that might just be in the back of his mind slightly. But the crowd, far from thinking sad thoughts, they are loving the action and the atmosphere on a Friday at this Mexico City Grand Prix weekend. We're at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, high-speed straights, tight and technical final sector, smooth track surface, and we've got, of course, the high altitude issue, 2,285 metres above sea level. Verstappen out there at the moment, getting the long run simulation in. He's fastest, ahead of Leclerc by a 10th after the quali runs. This is the sound of Max Verstappen making his way into the stadium. Kimi Antonelli third, ahead of Lando Norris. Lewis Hamilton the top 5. Then it's Russell, Tsunoda, Alonso the top 8, with Sainz and Stroll rounding out the top 10. Lawson is 11th ahead of Oscar Piastri, down in 12th. Ocon, Hadjar, Bortoletto the top 15, with Nico Hulkenberg, Oliver Behrman, Franco Colapinto, Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly making up the remaining 20 drivers as we get a look at Max Verstappen heading down into turn 1, onto the brakes, through the right-hander. Flovis painted all over the back of his red wing, clouts over the curbs, but not too much, as his teammate was alluding to earlier, possibly picking up a bit of floor damage. Now heads down the short straight. You'll get a dose of DRS if you're within a second of the car in front during the race. Slows it down for the left-hander of turn 4, through the right-hander of turn 5. Steady on the throttle, and then it's a double right-hander that takes you back on yourself to the short drag towards the high-speed S's. Flings it through the left-hander of 7. Try to move down the inside of Lando Norris there during the race last year, which came to no avail, and a penalty for Max Verstappen. Makes his way steadily through turns 10 and 11, doing a race simulation run, so the car a little heavier on fuel, and down the short straight towards the 90-degree right-hander of turn 12 into the Foro Sol, made up of that arcing left-hander which flicks you right. You jump over the curb on the exit, and then you pin it into the right-hander once more. Steady on the throttle, out through the final corner, named after Nigel Mansell after his cracking move on Gerhard Berger there back in 1990. And round onto the start-finish straight he goes again, and that's Max Verstappen round a lap of this Mexico City circuit.
Unfortunately, the Peraltada is no more, been replaced by that fiddly Mickey Mouse baseball stadium that's at the end of the lap now. That was an absolutely awesome corner. That was a brilliant race, actually, the 1990 Mexican Grand Prix. Alain Prost won it at the Ferrari from 13th on the grid. Probably, I think, Alain Prost's best ever drive. I think it's one of those ones that doesn't really get mentioned that much in the sort of litany of great historical drives. And maybe because Mansell sort of stole all the limelight by passing Gerhard Berger around the outside there in the very closing stages of the race. But Prost was leading and winning while Mansell was doing that.
Hadjar's actually running a tribute helmet to Alain Prost this weekend.
Oh, got all these out. That's a nice one. Because of that win?
I think so, yeah. And actually, you speak of Berger, go back to that 1990 race, he had pole. That was the last pole McLaren had in Mexico. Maybe until this Saturday, we shall see.
Unlikely.
Right now, it certainly looks like that, doesn't it? With McLaren behind a Mercedes, behind a Ferrari, behind a Red Bull. I mean, it's great for the championship if it's like this come Saturday and Sunday.
I tell you what, we've got Sam Bird coming in tomorrow. He's going to be in tears, isn't he, by the end of the weekend if it carries on like this?
Well, I don't think he's a part of the McLaren stable anymore.
True,
he's impartial now.
He's genuinely impartial now, exactly. No, I think Sam Bird might be lapping this up. He will be joining us, the former McLaren Formula E driver. Sam Bird will be in the box with us on qualifying day tomorrow and Sunday's Grand Prix. Qualifying, by the way, will be on Sports Extra from 5 to 10 in the evening, so it's a bit of a late one this weekend, with Sunday's Grand Prix in full on 5 Live through BBC Sound, so you can probably get it on your smart speakers as well. It will be on air from about 7:45. Lights out will be at 8 o'clock in the evening. You can join us for that then. I did not know, according to the graphics on screen as we're seeing Oscar Piastri, that he was once an F1 grid kid. He would have been one of the kids stood on the grid. I thought that was Kimi Antonelli, but Oscar Piastri as well. They've all done it.
I can't believe you didn't mention that his favourite treat was chocolate.
Oh, I didn't see that bit. No, I just thought his favourite food was pasta or something.
Yeah, and then his...
What's the other one? Chocolate.
His treat was chocolate.
Well, we had to provide context for that.
We did, yeah, but we've been having an entire conversation about chocolate today because you can't believe that I'm not really that bothered by chocolate. Well, but there you go.
You had one chocolate bar and said that was good enough for like the next month for you.
Yeah, that's about how many I eat. But there you go. That's Piastri eats enough chocolate for all of us.
There you go.
Rear feels terrible on this medium.
Understood.
George Russell not happy with how his Mercedes is running on those medium tyres, making his way around at the moment. Long runs ensue, but to say that the takeaway at the moment, Oscar Piastri is down in 12th, the championship leader after soft runs, but he's back out there again on the soft tyre, according to my timing screen. So Piastri then a bit of an anomaly, over 8/10 off the pace. He did run an FP1, didn't lose that time. Lando Norris did. So
let's verify that, Harry, because it's unusual. That's what these race runs. But it's not impossible because there is this question of the gap with the tyres. With the hard tyre is 2 steps harder than the medium tyre. Maybe McLaren are trying the soft tyre. I don't want to ruin long run corner, but I hope he is on the soft because he's not quick at the moment.
No. Well, yeah, we'll try and verify that. But at the moment, that's what I'm seeing on my timing screens, but sometimes they can flatter to deceive, and they have been a bit haywire this morning. There's been a few technical issues on the Formula One side of things, but we power through as radio. 13 minutes and 47, 46 seconds remaining. This is Max Verstappen from a few moments ago, making his way down towards turn number 4. And does he go a bit deep? Little bit, loses the rear. Little lock up from Max Verstappen coming into the left-hander of 4.
It's terrible. No grip. So terrible on ice.
It does seem very difficult out there, and I wonder just on Piastri, Austin was fairly low grip as well. Is there something about low grip surfaces that Piastri just struggles maybe to find a confidence in? And it's difficult anyway, but all these factors come into play, and we talk about the experience level as well. When you're fighting at this level, Oscar Piastri, of course, has fought for championships before in junior series, but just 3 seasons into his Formula One career finds himself fighting for a title.
Yeah, I mean, everything starts to prey on your mind, doesn't it, when you're fighting for a championship? Everything is going against you, everything is an issue, everything is a problem. And actually, just listening to Verstappen's radio, I was about to say it wouldn't be a Friday without Verstappen moaning about something, which usually means he goes on to win the race.
And he is currently sitting pretty at the top on that soft tyre run earlier. A 1:17.392, putting him a 10th ahead of Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli in 3rd. But now the top 3 are all out on the mediums. Does look like, although I would like to see them on the TV screens, that McLaren are both back out there, both on the soft tyre, with Lando Norris up in 4th spot, Hamilton 5th, Russell, Tsunoda, Alonso, Sainz and Stroll. The top 10, Lawson is 11th with Piastri 12th, Ocon, Hadjar, Bortoletto the top 15, Hulkenberg, Behrman, Colapinto, Albon and Pierre Gasly, the 20 remaining drivers. Here is Oscar Piastri, and we can visually confirm he is on the red walled rubber on the soft tyre, 11 laps old, these tyres. So are McLaren trying to see how far they can take a soft tyre into the race on Sunday, acting as the C5 soft? We have got a jump in compounds this weekend between the hard, skips a step, then the medium and the soft.
Well, Harry, you were saying earlier that last year Sainz in the Ferrari won with a medium and a hard strategy, and that was the strategy that everybody expected to be what was used in Austin, but it turned out very early in the race that the drivers who started on the hard tyre hated it effectively, and so that sort of started to lean everybody to using the wanting to use the softs, so they all extended their medium stints at the start and ran on the softs at the end. So having had that lesson in Austin a week ago, I would imagine McLaren are thinking, well, maybe we could get away with something like that here as well.
Well, both Norris then and Piastri out there on the soft tyre. They're not the only ones. Lance Stroll has joined them, and a few cars further back to Hulkenberg, Behrman, Colapinto, all out there again. So, I mean, this does leave us with a level of intrigue when it comes to those tyres, seeing what could work for the Grand Prix on Sunday. 71 laps of racing around this just over 4.3 kilometre circuit. We're looking at the Papaya McLaren of Lando Norris making his way through the Forosol and out in towards the final corner as the sun just peeks through this slot between buildings and grandstands and shines a glimmer onto the orange of that McLaren. He comes across the line and once again barrels down towards turn one. The braking distance between pole and turn one is about 768 metres you travel before you hit the brakes for that right hander, and that DRS, if you gain it as well, gives you about 0.06 of a second advantage over the car in front. 3 zones around here, only 2 detection points though, so if you're within a second of the car in front in the Grand Prix at coming through the Forosol just on the exit, you will get DRS all the way down the start-finish straight, and if you can get ahead there, then the beauty of it is you then get the DRS heading from turn 3 to turn 4, and it just allows you to pull away a little bit more or have a second bite of the cherry going into turn 4 if you can't complete the move down the 1.2 kilometre start-finish straight. The third DRS zone is between turns 11 and 12, that short blast there before you come into the Forosol. You can pick up that detection point coming through turns 9 and 10, just on the exit of the S's. So that could be a bit of strategy that unfolds during the race on Sunday to look out for. But 9 minutes on the clock remaining, and a mix of the medium, the soft and the hard tyres all out there at the moment. Ocon and Hadjar, the only 2 on the hard tyre, and after the struggles that we saw last week with the hard, even though this is acting as the C2, Pirelli saying it's quite a conservative one in terms of offering less grip than the hard would normally. So see how Hadjar and Ocon get on with that, and maybe they're just looking to discard it going into this weekend as we hear the sounds of Nico Hulkenberg, who was back in the points last time out, Beck. Long time coming for the Hulk.
Yeah, it had looked like it was going to be an amazing season after Silverstone, hadn't it? I mean, some very well-earned points. His first ever podium in about 3,600 races, or whatever the record was, about 239. Oh, good memory.
On the 239th attempt, he did it.
Yeah, so breaking that, which was very, very good for him. Everyone was extremely happy for him to get that podium. And then it's kind of gone off the boil a little bit, hasn't it? Jonathan Wheatley's obviously gone over there as team principal, and actually you can see a lot of the work that he's done already. He was talking in the team principal press conference earlier today, actually, and he lays a lot of the credit at Mattia Binotto for putting in place all the right technical structures. Obviously, Mattia Binotto was formerly a team principal at Ferrari, and just saying how great Binotto has been, and Wheatley has spent the last 6 months just kind of getting up to speed with everything and finding out how the team works and what's going to happen before it transitions over to Audi next season. But I think Wheatley deserves a lot of credit as to what has happened. I mean, we saw almost immediately the effect that he had on Sauber's pit stops and what they've done there and how much improved they are. Wheatley is described as being a military precision which is obviously the way that it has to be in Formula One, and he's very much brought that attitude over to Sauber, and I think they are reaping the benefits from that. And so Hulkenberg, with all of his experience, had that fantastic outing in Silverstone, and then again last time out in Austin.
They've done a bit of pinching of Sauber as well in a build-up to becoming Audi. They've nicked Max Verstappen's number 1 mechanic, and he's heading towards Audi, and they've taken a couple of high-up Ferrari engineers, Wolf Zimmermann from the power unit department and Lars Schmidt from the performance development department, are both heading towards Audi. So they certainly they're making some big moves, and I think Jonathan Wheatley, acting as team principal, so far seems to have gone well, as you say, and I feel like he's a burst of energy for that team, and I think he's sort of chomping at the bit to have that role as well. Kind of wasn't there for him at Red Bull, so able to get that kind of promotion after all these years. And I think I'd have to say Hulkenberg, okay, he's not looked great in qualifying, although he's starting to get better on that. Gabriel Bortoleto has had an up and down rookie year, but so far I think has impressed. So I think going into Audi, regardless of how their engine pans out, I think they've got solid foundations. When I think this time last year we were saying they're in a dire situation. They have managed to turn around and find some light at the end of the tunnel.
I think they're absolutely moving in the right direction. I think we can clearly see they're moving in the direction that they need to be. I think, sticking with Bortolesso, sticking with Hulkenberg, you've got the young talent, you've got the experience. It's exactly the mix that they need. And I think they're doing a great job. And you know who else I think is doing a great job? Because here we go. It is everybody's favourite time of practice. Fill up your tacos, pour yourself a spicy margarita, and sit back because you are invited to the #1 fiesta on a Friday night. It's time for
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
You can go the distance, we'll find out in the long run, in the long run.
To give you everything after that intro, Rebecca. Right, so unfortunately we've not got the comparison that we want, which is between the McLarens and Verstappen. And but of the McLarens between themselves, the only ones on the soft tyre out of the top runners. Norris is much quicker than Piastri, nearly 0.6 on average quicker than Piastri, both on the soft tyre. So I don't know what's happening to Oscar Piastri today. Slow on the soft tyre short runs, slow on the long runs. He's got a lot of homework to do tonight. On the medium tyres, the quickest driver is Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes, followed by George Russell. Followed by Charles Leclerc, followed by George Russell. Fourth, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, ahead of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. So something must be going on with the Red Bull. And I just want to read out Alonso's last 3 lap times, just for your delectation, Beck. 22.556, 22.565, 22.566. How about that for consistency?
Are you going to get that made into a poster and put on your wall?
I thought you could give me for a Christmas present. How about that?
Another spectacular edition of Long Run Corner, I must say. From introduction till the end. Top work, everyone. Top work all round. I think we need to clip that up and send it off for some sort of radio award, producer Joe.
The raspberries, what's the equivalent?
Yeah, well, I don't think we need one, really. So I take away from that, obviously Piastri's in trouble.
Hang on. Verstappen's just done a lap, unless he's changed tyres. Has he changed tyres while I've not been paying attention?
I think he's put the soft tyre on.
Okay, ignore me then.
All right, back. Mic off, Benson. So I take from that, between the two McLarens, Piastri's in trouble. Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. I mean, he has had, he's looked much stronger since his sort of European stint of races, hasn't he?
Well, he had a bit of a kick up the old proverbial, didn't he, with Toto Wolff declaring his Monza weekend as underwhelming, which was very unusual from Toto Wolff, team principal there at Mercedes. Doesn't normally call out his drivers, but it's worked. And Antonelli has improved since. From the, 3 points he scored from the 9 European races. He has done significantly better since we have left Europe.
Yeah, it was a really rough run. He got that podium in Canada, and then Austria didn't finish the race, Silverstone didn't finish the race, Belgium he finished 16th, he got a point in Hungary, 16th in the Netherlands, and then it started to pick up. 9th in Italy, 4th in Baku, 5th in Singapore, 8th last time out in the sprint. He didn't finish in the points in the USA, but as we mentioned, he rather got biffed out of the points by Carlos Sainz. So you have to say it has looked like a strong latter half of the year for the Italian rookie, just 19 years old, from Bologna, with a pole and a podium to his name. I think back to Miami, where we were all so impressed by him and thought, well, okay, Kimi Antonelli, welcome to the party, where have you been? Then he left the party for a bit. Is he now just starting to come back? Experience so crucial, and I suppose it can't be underestimated, the huge step that Antonelli took to come into Formula One, not only for the man he replaces, but let's remember, Toto Wolff made him skip Formula 3 and go straight into Formula 2, and in what was a really tough year for F2 as a championship, not only Antonelli.
Well, a lot was placed on Antonelli. He was really badged by Mercedes as this great talent, replacing Lewis Hamilton, would absolutely be able to come in and fill his shoes. They wrapped him in cotton wool before this year. No one was allowed near him. Media couldn't speak to him. He was fully protected, which, he was only 18 years old, I agree with. But then there was that strange weekend in his home race in Imola where he brought all of his classmates. And okay, possibly at first glance it looked like a good idea, but he was a bit distracted. It wasn't really, it just wasn't a good idea in the end. There was too much going on. It was his home race. Actually, what Mercedes should have done was say, no, close the doors, close the shutters. That's it. Just get on with the racing. Your home race is hard enough as it is without bringing in all of your classmates. And he has struggled. He hasn't kind of lived up to the hype that we were all expecting from Mercedes. But actually, without all of that hype, he's done an okay job, to be fair. He just perhaps hasn't matched the expectation that we all had of him, which was set by his bosses. And he's got used to the team. I think, he looks across the garage and sees George Russell step up into this leadership role, as we've been talking about, doing an absolutely superb job. And I think, with the likes of George Russell, he is the teammate that you want in this situation, because he will be there in the debriefs, helping Antonelli along, giving him the information, giving him the data that he needs, giving him advice, and just sort of mentoring him, really. And I think for Antonelli, he is coming good. I don't think there's any question mark over his future. He'll be in Mercedes for a good few years. They're very much thinking about building the team around him. All obviously dependent on whether or not Max Verstappen will jump, and quite frankly, for the same reason that Ferrari took Lewis Hamilton over Carlos Sainz, the same thing could happen again. We don't know, but it's looking promising for Antonelli as the checkered flag goes.
Yeah, just like that, in the blink of an eye, that's an hour's session done, and the day's track action done. Checkered flag is out. Clock has counted down to 0 after a really intriguing, practice 2. Norris just at the end switching back onto the medium tyre to do a practice start on as well. So that's quite interesting in itself, having run short and long runs on the red-walled soft tyres. We're going to just get a little replay of Lance Stroll diving down the inside at turn 1 on the inside of the Alpine, but he's all crossed up, runs in deep. And it was the same again, but this time between Nico Hülkenberg and Lewis Hamilton. But Nico Hülkenberg pulling off a rather neat move there on the 7-time champion, making his way through. So even though it's practice, they're still pushing. I think it was Pierre Gasly's Alpine who was rather sort of nudged out of the way by Lance Stroll, who just got the corner all wrong, ran deep, but did manage to get ahead and just about stick on to the track. But that is the session done. Max Verstappen fastest with a 1:17.392, a 10th clear of Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. Kimi Antonelli is third for Mercedes, ahead of Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, the top 5, with George Russell in 6th. Yuki Tsunoda was 7th, ahead of Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll, the top 10. Liam Lawson 11th, ahead of Oscar Piastri, who looks like he will have a lot of homework to do tonight, while the championship leader Esteban Ocon 13th, Hadjar and Bortoletto the top 15.
Well, from the last 2 laps, how did it look? I guess McLaren on another planet, no?
Yeah, for now Norris is very fast, more so than Piastri.
Interesting there from Brian Botzi reporting back to Charles Leclerc. I mean, he's right about Norris being faster than Piastri, but I wouldn't quite agree with that they're in another planet.
Not even close, and it's surprising. Well, we haven't heard it, at least. He didn't ask about Verstappen, who has been on another planet for the last 4 races or so. Interesting, isn't it, how they get into the psyche of each other and what they're all expecting.
Very interesting. Just finishing it off then, Hülkenberg 16th, ahead of Behrman, Franco Colapinto, Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly, the top 20 as the practice starts ensue. Final thoughts then, Rebecca, your learnings from Friday and your hopes and dreams for the rest of the weekend.
Hopes and dreams include a spicy margarita. I believe Andrew Benson's prediction of a Piastri victory may be short of the mark, and I am going to stick with Max Verstappen on the top step, with the next 4 races being just as juicy as the last 4.
Lovely work. Thank you very much, Rebecca. You're leaving us now for the weekend.
Yes,
so
for my margaritas.
Indeed. Thank you for your hard work. We'll report back to you how Sunday goes when it comes to the predictions.
Thank you. Let me know my homework if I've got as much as Piastri.
Oh, absolutely. That will ensue. Right, we're done. Thank you, Beck. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for joining us late in the evening in the UK. We will be back for the final practice session on Saturday. That's going to be on Sports Extra 2, ahead of starting at 6:30, the green light, and then qualifying that all-important Power Hour on Sports Extra with the green light on at the end of pit lane from 10 o'clock in the evening. Thank you for your company. Max Verstappen then was fastest in FP2. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari fastest in FP1. And other McLarens having to play catch-up. Let's see what Saturday brings. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.